Hello, Blackhawks Nation, and welcome to the latest episode of Blackhawks Insider, the official podcast of the Chicago Blackhawks, presented by ChevyDriveChicago.com. Drive what Kane and Taves drive. I'm Chris Vosters. Coming up on the podcast today, we talk with Blackhawks Univision broadcasters Miguel Esparza and Jorge Moreno about their journeys covering hockey and their secret lives outside the rink. We also break down the Hawks' recent comeback wins and look forward to the games ahead. Much more coming up on the podcast presented by ChevyDriveChicago.com. Drive what Kane and Taves drive. Welcome to the show. It is great to be with you. I'm joined by my two outstanding co-hosts, Caley Chelios and Colby Cohen. Home opening week is in the books, and what a weekend it was with two wins at the United Center, both in come-from-behind fashion. A win against the hated Detroit Red Wings on a Friday night, and then a Sunday matinee kids game that got off to a bit of a sleepy start, but saw the Blackhawks come back in equally impressive fashion and knock off the Seattle Kraken. I guess, Caley, let's start with some of the off-ice fun that you and I had specifically on Friday night before the home opener, walking the red carpet. We were both dressed to the nines, a little more casual now, of course, hosting the podcast, but I thought it was a ton of fun being a part of a hockey event in that way, certainly a non-traditional experience beyond just a game call or being in studio. What did you think? What was your red carpet experience like?
I loved it. I don't think this weekend could have gone any better. Back-to-back Hawks wins, 3 straight, first red carpet in a super sequent number. I recently dyed my hair, so it was the most unsubtle I've ever been on anything. I remember walking past Taze when we were all getting into our Chevy cars to do it, and he was just like, subtle. Like something's different. I can't tell. And I was like, there's a lot different going on. But I loved my dress and the experience trying on the outfits, Chris. I enjoyed your TikTok, was like amazing. So I can't complain. The red carpet with Scott Darling was amazing. He was hilarious, and his little interactions with Kaner, Taze, and some of the guys being on the media side for the first time were great, laughing at him and having a good time. So red carpet experience was amazing. Outfits, awesome, and went full glam and then ended with a win. So I can't say, Chris, that it wasn't one of my top weekends, maybe covering sports. It was a lot of fun.
I would put it right up there as well, and special thanks to the folks at 900 North Michigan Shops for outfitting Caley and me for the big night, a big night on and off the ice. And Colby, you look pretty dapper as well, my man. I love the suit that you picked up. It was, what did you say, maroon, right? Or burgundy? Yeah, is that the correct color? It looked sharp.
Yeah, probably more burgundy than maroon, but I'm just disappointed you didn't wear a fanny pack. I mean, I had heard a rumor that you were going to wear a fanny pack. Interesting to see you wearing Gucci shoes. I definitely didn't ever think I would see you wearing such an intriguing brand like that. Caley, I expect that kind of, you dressing up, and I mean, you really pulled it off, but it was
my family is from Wisconsin, and big Packers fans, cheeseheads, and I remember for my wedding, I got a Yeti cooler, like, tote bag, and my aunt was like, don't laugh, like, that is the Prada bag of Wisconsin. So I'm sure, Chris, for you, that was an extraordinary look for all the Wisconsinites back home. I'm sure they love the Gucci style.
It definitely turned some heads. It was the first time I've worn a tux since my high school prom, full disclosure. The Gucci fanny pack definitely made some ripples. I decided not to make it part of my red carpet look, but if we do it again, who knows? I mean, feeling like I maybe am a Gucci guy, and just had to kind of tease that out a little bit. So,
well, you can wear your fanny pack when you wear a turtleneck at some point.
I think a fanny pack and a turtleneck would be a fantastic combination. You staying warm on the benches too, Colby? I know it's a little icy there, quite literally, but you've been adapting your look for more of a warm weather type atmosphere, right?
Well, you guys were giving me such a hard time when I put my jacket on, a couple games ago. Maybe that might have even been preseason. So now I'm going for more layering. I had the undershirt going, I had to get bigger dress shirts so I could fit a full long sleeve shirt under my dress shirt. And then I went with the sweater. Wayne Gretzky inspired me. He puts that sweater on and he wears it on the broadcast every week. And he just looks so stylish with the sweater. So I was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to try the sweater. And I don't know. I felt pretty good about it. I did. I was warmer. It gets cold sitting between the benches, especially when I don't leave the whole game, and you're not moving around. There's nowhere for me to go. So I'm still working my way through what's going to be the appropriate amount of layers without you guys taking shots at me from the booth about my jacket choices.
I just got to say, for somebody who grew up in a rink, I am shocked at how cold you get. I've never seen anybody get colder in an arena than Colby Cohen.
I don't like the cold at all. Like, literally. I mean, if I could have 4 seasons of hot, I would have 4 seasons of hot.
Oh, I like the cold.
I can, I like the seasons. I guess I'll kind of split the difference there. Although the unseasonable fall weather that we've had, unseasonably warm weather, has been really, really nice and kind of added to the good vibes of the weekend with the team picking up 4 points in an overtime win against Detroit and then another win against Seattle. What's going on with the penalty kill? I mean, I gotta ask. You guys see the game in a very detailed way. For me, I've never seen anything like this before, where it's almost like you take a penalty and it's like, all right, we're about to score. 4 shorthanded goals for the Hawks in a 3-game stretch. They've scored a shorthanded goal in 3 straight games for the first time since February of 2009. I mean, Colby, is this just a case of puck luck? Is it something that the coaching staff is doing from a philosophical standpoint to generate all these chances with a man down?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I would be lying if I said there's not some puck luck involved here, because you need it when you're down. But I think a lot of it has to do with the philosophy and the freedom that the players have to, be more aggressive on the penalty kill. In the NHL, players are so good. You look at these power plays on every team, and there's just superstar players. And for the most part, when they have one more than you, when you're overly aggressive, it's going to burn you, and they're going to make plays around you. So most teams are more focused now on blocking shots, staying tight. We were talking during the broadcast last game about the shot blockers on the hands, the feet. These things are different. And so a lot of teams really just rely on being really good, well-structured in the defensive zone, and then really dumping the puck down, getting fresh legs on the ice, and not really applying much pressure up the ice. But it's just a mindset, and it's a freedom thing, Caley, and you and I have talked so much about it in the studio, of their ability to really just go down the ice and feel that freedom to do that.
Yeah, I agree, and I think as a young group, they've been able to develop some chemistry among the forward pairs. I know forwards really like going with the same guys because they can play off each other and anticipate each other's tendencies, which is great. And I think, too, the PK is just all about work ethic and compete and putting your body in front of shots, getting the small details of it. And Luke Richardson, I think, is a huge part of that. So not only is the team buying into the system, the philosophy, but they're buying into him and the coaching staff. So they're having fun coming ready to work every day, and that's translating on the ice. Tyler Johnson talked about that after the last win. And I also think a little bit of, Luke Richardson, I know a couple people had mentioned Rod Brindamore, just as players, coaches that have come into the league. Rod the Bod, they're both staying in great shape. They're practicing with the players. I love that nickname. And awesome. I think he's awesome.
An awesome guy. Yeah, me too. I'm with you.
And Carolina kind of raised some eyebrows with their power kill, a couple seasons back. It's one of the most aggressive PKs in the league, and they're just all over it, creating chaos, forcing other teams' power plays to play faster and make mistakes. And I think Luke Richardson's done a great job at trying to implement some of that, like Colby talked about, aggressive behavior on the PK, and it's translating into offense.
And Chris, look, I've never seen anything like this in being around hockey since I was a little kid. Caley, you could chime in if you ever did. You were born into this game. But I've never seen something quite like this where they're scoring this much, consistently on the penalty kill.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a tiny tot, I don't think the PK when our dads all were coaching us was that impressive. So I certainly cannot speak to my own experience killing penalties.
Tiny tot.
With my bucket and my turtleneck, absolutely not. We didn't have that kind of philosophy. Yeah, no, definitely not. But I agree. I haven't seen an aggressive penalty kill the way that we have in the last few seasons. And Tampa Bay did it too so well. Like Anthony Cirelli is a underrated kind of Selke caliber player, and he was one of the best players I've seen at anticipating and reading plays, knowing when to pressure. And I think the Hawks so far have shown some really positive glimpses of doing that as forward and deep pairs as well.
Well, we're a couple of weeks into the season now, and it's maybe a little too early to say, okay, there are some outright surprises here, but I look at the Central Division for starters, and Minnesota's gotten off to a slow start, which is surprising. Their goaltending in particular has been pretty bad. It looks like the Vancouver Canucks are pressing the panic button. The Toronto Maple Leafs have been a little shaky to start. Otherwise, you mentioned the Carolina Hurricanes, Caley. They look every bit the part of a Stanley Cup contender here to start the season. Any storylines or any surprises NHL-wide that, I guess, Caley, I'll start with you, that you want to highlight or emphasize here?
I'm on board with that. In the beginning of the season, I said like Nashville was going to be a little bit of an underdog, and I was excited to see Vancouver. They all have kind of tanked. Minnesota has tanked. Very unexpected from what I thought. Watching them in the preseason, I thought they looked great, and they had Rossi and these young players that I thought were going to flourish to start the season, but it's still early. For Minnesota, they're a contending team, so I would like to think that this start for them is really disappointing. Vancouver, too, like you mentioned. When are you going to start to see some coaching changes at this point? Like, it's hard to think that we're already having that conversation, but they got off to a really slow start, too. But I'll say one thing not related to that, I guess, like your thoughts on Phil Kessel's Ironman streak and potentially setting an NHL record for it against San Jose, but he has an opportunity to play in his 989th against Toronto. So, I mean, Colby, I guess, what's your thought on what that streak means? Keith Yandel set the record at 989 and what it takes to accomplish that.
Well, I think it's really fitting for Kessel that he gets to potentially do it against Toronto. Obviously, he had a lot of success there, played, a good portion of his career in that city and did it well. I think Phil was pretty consistently putting up points and doing it well and taking a lot of heat as well. I mean, we see these American players, they go into Toronto and the fans love them, but they also love to give them a really short leash. So I think it's really fitting. And look, I just would say, to me, it's one of the most impressive things that I can see in this sport and in this game. I really personally struggled with injuries as a pro hockey player. Was able to get through my 3 years I did at BU with minimal injuries, because when you did get injured during a game, you had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to figure out whatever the problem was and, kind of get ready for Friday night. And so when I got to pro, it just started falling apart. I broke my foot in training camp one year. I had to have hip surgery. I had to have sports hernia surgery. I mean, it was one thing after the next. And so it gives me a personal appreciation, Caley, for just how impressive it is for what Phil Kessel's been able to do. And, I just really commend him, Keith Yandel, Doug Jarvis, any of these guys that have put these streaks together. I mean, look, I think playing an 82-game season without missing a game is just so wildly impressive. Chris, you're now around the Blackhawks for your second year. You were kind of in and out a little bit last season, and you'd come to practice one week. The next week, we'd have 5 new players called up because of injuries, and COVID is a whole nother factor that Phil Kessel is able to maneuver his way through. So
great point.
Caley, I know that was a long-winded answer, but I just have so much appreciation for what Phil Kessel is about to accomplish. And The guy gets unnecessarily dragged in the media for all different other types of things. But, I'm rooting to see him continue to play, continue to score goals. And I'd like to see him have a big year in Vegas and continue to knock the doubters who are negative about him.
Yeah, Chris. Go ahead. I don't want to cut you off here
for a guy that gets mocked for his dad bod. Maybe we should all be asking Phil Kessel what his kind of recovery and workout strategy is, because the guy is about to play in more games consecutively than anyone else in NHL history. So maybe we should be doing what Phil's doing in the offseason and in season.
I'm all about that. I'm not on a program right now. I'm down to get on the Phil Kessel program. And I agree. I think it's kind of crazy, and I know he's gotten a lot of jokes and whatever, but if I'm him, I'm disappointed that the narrative isn't about I've played, over 1,000 games, and I've played nearing 1,000 games consecutively, and yet the first thing people are talking about as the setting the record for Ironman is my body and just being out of shape and how I don't look like an Ironman. He's scored north of 300 goals, he's nearing 1,000 points. You don't just get numbers like that and win cups on championship teams if you're not going to the dirty areas of the ice. Maybe he's not the most physical player necessarily, but I certainly wouldn't begin the conversations like I've been hearing around the league with, he's this, physically, he's not in tip-top shape and all that. I would be highlighting, if I'm Phil Kessel, he's almost played 1,000 consecutive games. That's incredible. He's not only about to break the record, but let's talk about that, not the dad bod, which I don't know as a player, how old that gets, especially when he's about to set an NHL record. I don't think that would be what I want people to be talking about.
Well, and I think it paints a good picture for people that everybody has a little bit of a different path. We don't have to look too far to talk about Chris Chelios, who, I don't know what his, games played in a row record is, but your dad played a legendary amount of professional hockey games and was always well known for being in unbelievable shape. And, I hear he still gets after it pretty good with, his activities, whether he's riding up mountains or whatever, and he still you see him around the United Center, and the guy's still in incredible shape, at least it appears so. So everybody has a little bit of a different path to being a longtime NHL player.
That's a really good point.
All right, let's move to the next segment of our program, Sellies or Chirps. The three of us each bring a local story or relevant topic to the group and ask if it should be celebrated or chirped. Colby?
This works good off of what we were talking about earlier, because it's been really warm the last 5 or 6 days in Chicago. We had 75, 80-degree days, and my neighbor is telling me how annoyed they are because it's warm out. I'm like, why are you annoyed? Well, we're ready for, jackets, and we've already put our pumpkins out and everything. And I'm like, why are you upset that it's 75 degrees? Well, we've already moved on from the hot weather. I can't wrap my head around that type of thought process. So, is that a thing here? Do they celebrate the cold? What's going on? Are we celebrating it? Are we chirping it? I'm celebrating any day that I'm not freezing. So where are you guys at with this?
Chris, you go ahead, because you've seen some cold days in your life.
Well, first of all, it's interesting that you bring this topic up, Colby, because I still remember in May of this year, you and I both were wearing a winter jacket at one point in May. So it's and by the time May rolls around, everyone's really sick of the cold. But I think in the Midwest, especially when you grow up in the upper Midwest, you are very loyal to the seasons. And look, there's this inner body clock among people who live in this part of the country where it's late October. It should be a little bit chilly, a little bit crisp. And when it's 75, 80 degrees, people kind of tweak out. Now, me personally, I love the warm weather. I know we're about to get strapped with 5 straight months of sub 40 degree weather and probably 3 straight months of sub freezing weather. So I will take this bonus time with warm weather 100%. But I'll celebrate the warm weather, but people get a little cranky when the weather is not what they expect it to be, whether it's too warm or too cold.
I second that. I think the key word is crisp. I like crisp at this time of year, so it is a little warm, but it's not summer heat. So I'll take the weather that it is right now all day, every day. I had my kids outside the entire day on Saturday, and we painted our chicken coop. But
where are the chickens going to go when it gets below freezing? Are you bringing them into the house?
I guess
they're tough.
They're really tough. They do that. I don't know. I'm learning. I don't either, but I
hope I didn't just like alert PETA that you're like torturing chickens.
Freezing my chickens
at the Chelios residence.
It's my understanding they are winter strong, so I think they'll survive the winter, and I'll start bringing you guys some eggs in the morning when we get to game days. I'm excited to.
Hey, chickens have been around a long time, highly evolved species. They can handle the winter weather.
Just
right?
making sure
you need to take after the chickens, Colby. I think you could learn a thing or two.
Organizations hereby. Chris is putting a bow on it. Good job, Chris. You're a professional.
Here's my Selly or chirp. I was at a Second City comedy show the other night, and we got to the end of the 2-act show, and it was very funny, and they said, hey, if you want to stick around, we have a bonus third segment for you with a special guest. And it was, of all people, NBA player Blake Griffin, who came to prominence notably with the Los Angeles Clippers. He's played for several teams in his career, the Detroit Pistons. Currently, he's with the Boston Celtics. So he comes out on stage, 6'9", just towering over everybody on stage, and was thrown into the middle of an improv sketch that went on for a solid 20 minutes. And it was one of those improv scenes where there are two people or so actually acting, everyone else is on the side, and then when someone wants to jump in, they tap out another person or just jump into the sketch. So credit to Blake Griffin. I thought he was very funny. I was shocked that a pro athlete would take himself or herself out of their comfort zone in such a way. And I mean, these guys are used to performing in front of thousands, if not millions, of fans. But here he was on a comedy stage doing improv, something that he probably doesn't have much, if any, training in. So I would celebrate the fact just that he was out there making himself vulnerable. But what would you think if you saw a celebrity cameo appearance in an improv act? Would you just be impressed that the person was up there doing it, or would you just be like, okay, this needs to be more than just a celebrity appearance? Like, I'm going to hold Blake Griffin to some kind of comedy standard here.
I'll go first. I say Selly big time. I like him a lot. I think he's really talented. And shout out Scott Darling, too, because
yes.
I could never, ever do that. I would be so awkward and nervous on stage. But Scott said when you make a big save and the crowd goes wild, there's like nothing like landing a joke and the crowd going wild. So that's a huge celebration for me. I don't think you could just be a celebrity and make a cameo to be funny. And do that is like a whole nother ball game that I can't relate to.
Yeah, I mean, just having the courage to do that, I mean, I'm celebrating it as well. Especially working with Scott now and having him tell us and sort of teach us what it's like, because we always have so many questions for him about his stand-up comedy and where he works on his jokes and other, situations. So that's pretty cool that Blake Griffin had to do it. But I guess my question about Blake Griffin, I thought he got really popular for dating a Kardashian. Are you sure it's from do I have that right? Or because I feel like that is where I really knew who he was, because I don't really follow the NBA that closely.
Kaylee, I need you to help me out here.
Chris, I know you watch the Kardashians. I'm sure you've seen Chris, the new episode on Hulu.
Stop. Just stop. You have a girlfriend. You watch the Kardashians. Let's be honest.
I actually saw him do like a lot of comedy, and he was in a couple movies. So I forgot that he dated Kendall Jenner from the Kardashians, but I'm not surprised, Colby, that you are on top
Jenner.
of that.
See, I thought he dated Kim Kardashian. So see, I don't even have my facts.
I think
right.
you're thinking of Chris Humphries back in the day, her second marriage, NBA player, big tall guy.
Oh, that's right. That was the one that lasted like 10 days. That's exactly what I was thinking of.
72,
So
but I don't watch.
No, we're not keeping track,
72,
right?
but you're not surprised that I know. Okay. Moving on.
Moving on. Okay, so mine kind of fits what we spoke about today with Phil Kessel being in shape. I've seen a lot of things in Chicago. There's like a pumpkin patch / family fit obstacle course that you can go to in Lincoln Park. There's a few of them in the city. I'm going to chirp saying I don't like to mix workouts and physical fitness with my pumpkins and my eating and drinking and celebratory fashion. So do you guys do like turkey trots, or would you go through this family fit obstacle course while you're pumpkin patching and eating cider and donuts? What's the vibe, Colby?
I'm gonna take your side on this one, Caley. I'm probably not mixing alcohol and fitness, and those activities all sound like activities that are heavily alcohol driven. So definitely no turkey trots, no polar plunges. None of those events are happening in the Cohen household. Now, who knows what happens later in life? Kids start to enter the picture. Maybe we're out doing the pumpkin. Exactly. So I'm not going to say never, but for now, I'm going to go ahead and side with you on this one as a chirp.
So I have done turkey trots. Don't knock it until you try it. That's all I'll say.
I knew you had, Chris.
But here's the thing. I think you have to. It's all about managing your expectations, right? I mean, if you're going to this family fit day, I mean, sure, I understand that's what it's labeled, but if you know that there's going to be cider, donuts, and delicious food and drink there, and you want to partake in that, by all means, go for it. But don't think that running an obstacle course is going to offset that kind of calorie intake or anything like that. So just be realistic. I mean, maybe I guess I understand where you guys are coming from by assigning a chirp to this, because it's like, look, this is not actually something that you're gonna close your move ring on your Apple Watch by doing family fitness and a pumpkin race at Jefferson Park. So I think it's cool. I like the way that they're trying to market it in a healthy way. Like let's be active. It's
an organic
let's have fun.
Turkey trot.
Well, a turkey trot. Hey, that's a 5K, man. I mean that gives me an extra portion of mashed potatoes at.
Kayla, you really invited the fun sponge.
I knew actually after I thought about it, I was like, oh, Chris is 100% a turkey trotter.
Polar
but I
plunger,
love that you said that. But I was thinking like you don't like to do the Michael Scott load up on fettuccine Alfredo and then take off on donuts and cider. That's what I'm picturing if I'm gonna do it. Maybe it's like the former athlete. Like I'm setting a PR if I'm gonna do a turkey trot after I've had donuts and cider.
Kaylee's pushing Bella out of the way. Get out of my way.
The Office 5K episode is maybe one of the best in the run of the show. That is such a funny episode. But no, fortunately, there have not been any Michael Scott 5K moments for me. Although that is one of my favorite episodes.
We're going to dedicate one podcast to The Office alone, and there's so many hockey ties with Michael Skate's on-ice performances, Fettuccine Gate. I'm very excited down the road to get The Office involved here.
And I know you've got some company in studio. I heard Scott Darling is also an Office fan. He quoted Michael Scott at I think it was the second intermission of our Seattle Kraken broadcast, so I know that won't be the last Office reference that I hear on Blackhawks Intermission Live.
Well, especially when we're sitting there and the in-game broadcast, and we're like, oh, okay, like we're gonna hear what studio says, and then we'll all kind of pass it around and talk a little bit about it. And Kaylee, you go and you're giving like a serious, what you think the Hawks need to do to hold on to the lead or to get the lead. I don't remember the exact scenario. And then, Scott chimes in the last 9 seconds and You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, Michael Scott. Like, I mean, there's just nothing we can do with that. Except laugh.
Yeah, he's caught me a couple times off guard where I didn't expect him to land a joke in the moment, and then I start laughing on set, and I have to gather myself a little bit. But I was like, okay, Wayne Gretzky, we're getting the mentality going into the next period.
All right, guys, good stuff on Sellies and Chirps. Can't wait to see what we come up with next week. We're really excited to introduce our podcast guests for this week's episode. Miguel Esparza and Jorge Moreno, the Spanish language broadcasters for Blackhawks hockey on Univision Deportes Radio AM 1200 TUDN. Miguel is the play-by-play voice on Univision Deportes Radio, and Jorge is his color analyst. These two guys are some of the busiest guys in Chicago sports media. Miguel does Spanish language play-by-play for the Blackhawks, the Cubs, and the Bears. And Jorge is the regular full-time analyst on Spanish language radio for the Blackhawks and Cubs and does a little bit of Bears on the side. So two longtime Chicagoans who have been part of the sports media landscape in the city for a long time, both super interesting to talk about. And as we have wrapped up Hispanic Heritage Month, we really wanted to get the perspective of Jorge and Miguel and get to know them a little bit better. So we really think you'll like our conversation with the two of them, and we will absolutely be visiting them with them again on future Blackhawks Insider Podcast episodes. Take a watch. Miguel, Jorge, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to be with you. Miguel, I can tell you've been on a lot of podcast interviews, my man. That is a sick man cave backdrop you've got going on there. I see a hockey stick. I see some bobbleheads. Any memorabilia that you want to point out to us?
I think I have a little bit of everything. I have Julio Cesar Chavez right here, boxing legend. Patrick Kane up here, that's signed. This one's signed by the whole team. I have Chris Chelios bobblehead right here. And then I have the
I love that.
bobbleheads. Yeah, so I'm looking. I don't know if you guys know a connection. Somebody that could get that autograph from me. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know.
I don't even have a Chris Chelios bobblehead, but I'd be happy to pass it on to him.
It's going to cost you a couple bottles of tequila, but
let's go.
He always pops into the radio booth at the UC with John and I. We got to get him on you and Jorge's broadcast one time. He's always eating popcorn.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Amazing.
Well, Miguel and Jorge, welcome to hockey season. The team had a nice run at the start of its homestand with the come-from-behind win against Detroit, another come-from-behind win against Seattle, and I guess I'd like to just get your thoughts on the team so far and kind of your initial impressions of the Blackhawks under head coach Luke Richardson. And Miguel, I guess I'll start with you.
You know, what I've seen from this team is a team that doesn't give up, and I think we've seen it throughout these come from behind wins. And the way that they fight, especially on those power plays. These guys are not just laying an egg. These guys are out there fighting every time wherever that puck is. And obviously those shorthand goals are just beautiful to see and be able to call. So it's just been one of those exciting times at the United Center, and I love it.
And I would completely agree. You know, seeing these new players come in, especially these free agents, Anthony Ciu, Max Domi, and contribute right away to this team. Staylock on the goalie, it's just been amazing, and the UC's been rocking, and there's no better place to be than at the UC while it's rocking and the Hawks getting some wins.
You guys both grew up in the Chicago area, obviously, so you're very familiar with Chicago sports culture. But Jorge, how did you originally get into hockey, and how did you get to the point where you're now an analyst on Chicago Blackhawks broadcasts?
Well, my passion and love for hockey initially started with NHL '94. I don't know if you guys played video games, but that's what started everything off. And then little by little, as I got older, I kept playing hockey games, and I came across a pair of tickets back in '06 to go watch a home opener, and I just fell in love with the game. Fell in love with the rink, with the excitement, with just the sounds of hockey, because they're very distant sounds to any other sport. And just little by little growing with the passion, and then with the championship teams came about, and how can you not love a winning team? And then Univision actually started. Univision and the Blackhawks came together, And they looked at me and they're like, "We know you like hockey. We know you speak good Spanish. Would you like to become one of our analysts?" And I said, "Of course I would. You know, it's a dream come true being a Chicagoan."
And Miguel,
Chris, I got to interrupt you here because I have a follow-up question. What were you playing NHL 94 on? Were you a Nintendo guy, Sega Genesis guy? I mean, that game is legendary.
It is. Sega Genesis was my console back in the day. So it was a big cart. NHL 94 was a little big cart. So I put it on there, and it was just love for the game. And then what was my next game? Like NHL 2004, and just like legends like Mike Modano is one of my favorite players. So just being able to play with Mike Modano and celebrating those goals. Like I felt like I was part of the hockey culture.
I think Sharpie on our broadcast last game was talking about Mike Modano being his favorite player.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That's funny. That's such an interesting thing to hear, that the video game is actually what drew you into that game. Chris, I don't know if you ever had that game. Caley, I got to think you guys had the NHL, 94 and above and hits and all those games in your house, right?
Yes, but as the third sibling with two older brothers, I'm a professional watcher of every game. Like my sister and I never got to play unless they needed a snack or a bathroom break. So we were always last on the totem pole to actually play, but I've watched it for like 20 years.
I'll totally echo what you said, Jorge, that video games was a big part of the reason why I got into wanting to be a play-by-play broadcaster. So I don't call it we're just a product of our generation or whatever you want, but definitely that's how a lot of, I think, people our age got into loving sports and even wanting to become sports broadcasters. But speaking of getting into this industry, Miguel Esparza has had a very, very long career in entertainment media that's come in a variety of forms. And Miguel, I would certainly love to dive into your professional past in a little bit here. But as far as getting into play-by-play broadcasting specifically, how did you make that transition?
It's one of those things that I was going to say fell in my lap, but no, I made it happen. So there was I've always loved sports. I'm a go-getter. So one day, it was just one of those things. They brought me back to a radio station. I was rehired by a radio station that were broadcasting the Bears at that time. And I told them right off the bat when I came in, I said, one of my plans or what I want to do when I come back is be on the Bears broadcast. I said, that's just on my list. And they were like, okay, well, good to know. Then it happened that the programming department wanted to make a change. They remembered, Miguel, you said you wanted to be on this broadcast. Do you have a demo? I said, yeah, absolutely. And I went and created a demo for it. I watched a video on YouTube, created a demo, sent it over, and I was on the broadcast the next game. So it was just self-taught, go-getter. I said, you know what, I want this, and I'm going to make it happen kind of deal.
I love that. I have a question, Miguel and Jorge,
Yeah.
both of you actually, and you'd mentioned that you weren't taught how to do hockey play-by-play, like you weren't brought up with how to do it, especially in Spanish. So with hockey, there's such a weird language sometimes, like toe drag, top cheddar, sauce, like it's a very unique kind of culty. What are some of the ways that you were able to take those adjectives or verbs, whatever it is, and like make it your own? Because I'm sure there wasn't like a direct translation into Spanish in your broadcast. So how did you kind of create your own language in a way?
You want to take that, George, or you want me to take it?
You could start off and I follow you.
Yeah, one of the things that, like I said, I wasn't taught how to do none of this. I learned everything on my own pretty much. And just the way that my mind works is like, okay, how can I make this sound good for our audience and make them understand what I'm trying to say, with every single play that I'm calling? Because, radio, we have to be on every single second. I'm nonstop, so I have to make sure that, yes, I have certain ways of saying where they are and how they do it. But like direct translations, that's something that I never, I didn't even look into it, just because it was like, it's just difficult to do,
And I agree, adding to what he said, adding to what Miguel said, it is difficult, but at the same time, I try to get certain words from different sports. For example, in soccer, you see a pass that's a little bit more like a kind of like a saucer pass, if I could relate it to soccer, and then just try to translate it as much so that the Spanish speaking community could relate it to a sport that they know. So that's how kind of worked around the words in hockey. But nonetheless, the people have gotten, our fans have understood, and they keep liking our broadcast. So I think that's we've done a good job so far.
Well, being self-taught is super impressive for you guys. Chris tried to teach me how to do play-by-play last year in Seattle by unplugging his headset in the second period and leaving me high and dry on a broadcast early in the year. So the fact that you guys were able to just teach yourselves how to do it is so impressive. And the fact that you guys are doing it for not just the Hawks, the Cubs, the Bears. How do you go from game to game? You guys were doing a Hawks game 24 hours ago, and within a couple of hours that we're talking, you're going to be doing Bears Monday Night Football. I mean, does your brain get jumbled with all the numbers and the names and the rules? I mean, we have enough trouble coming up with rules just for one sport, let alone 2 or 3 in 3 days.
Yeah, no, our brains are just weird, George, see, this is why we're such a good team. I really, like with George, George, I always tell him, you're my other set of eyes, but you're also my other brain. Anything that I miss, anything, and he knows exactly where to come in for everything. And when it comes to preparation for these different sports, you have to turn off, just one sport, and sometimes you just mix them up. So, I was driving to the United Center on Sunday, but I was watching Bear stuff because I had already in my brain the night before looked at all Hawks the day before. So I just wanted to just submerge myself into Bears a little bit more so that by the time that Monday came around, I was already a little bit within there. But my preparation also comes from arriving usually 3 hours prior to. My brain works in the kind that I need to have it, fresh. So I have to have that. So those hours of preparation are very key for me as well.
And I agree. Obviously, like for example, for tomorrow or for our next game, I'm already looking at the roster, looking at the names, the pronunciations, their stats, and that comes with any and every sport. Baseball in itself is also another like a daily grind, but it's like the saying goes, when you do something that you love, it's never hard or it feels like work. It just feels like passion, and getting there early and seeing the sights, seeing like in hockey, seeing how they the Zamboni, them clearing the ice, just the minutes before the storm really helps you out, like clear the mind, and then you just start getting ready for the game, and it's just it's a very good adrenaline rush, I could say.
Well, fellas, I can totally relate to doing what you love to do. One thing in my career that I've had to learn along the way is finding balance and stepping away from work, actually, because I love it so much, and just finding other areas in my personal life that I can grow and develop. And getting to know both of you, you both are very interesting and have some really interesting experiences and backgrounds off the air or beyond the sports broadcasting world. And I guess for Miguel, you have an alter ego truly as an Elvis tribute artist. And so we had a pregame broadcast dinner before the start of the season in the West Loop. And I have to apologize to you, Miguel, because you kind of like just let it slip, matter of fact, that you're an Elvis tribute artist. And I think for the next 20 minutes, I was just like grilling you about like everything that goes into being an Elvis tribute artist. And I totally just took over the conversation. You probably wanted to talk to other people about maybe the Blackhawks or something like that, but you were just answering my question. So for the people out there that don't know what goes into being an Elvis tribute artist, tell us a little bit about how you got into that, and then kind of what your shtick is like, maybe some of the songs that you like to sing, and just how you go about performing as an Elvis tribute artist.
I love Elvis. So as a very young kid, I found a tape my dad had, and I listened to it, and I was like, dude, I love this, When I was 15, my dad drove me down to Graceland, and just that was it for me. I fell in love. Later on in my life, in radio broadcasting, I've been doing this for 21 years now, but there was a little window where I was directly not at a radio station. However, I was doing voiceover work and working with a station in Kentucky remotely. And I said, well, I need a job. I need to find something for during the week that I can do. And cousin of mine worked at a casino in Joliet, and I said, listen, are you guys hiring? He says, go on the website, check if you find something that you like, let me know. And there was a position that said celebrity pit dealer. I clicked on it because it was interesting to me. And it said, must know how to sing, dance, whatever. So I called him up. I said, what is this about? He says, well, they're going to have different representing different artists. You're going to be dressed as an artist dealing blackjack. So I was like, dude, I sing like Elvis, I don't know how to deal in blackjack, but I can sing like Elvis. So he's like, all right, give me a second. Calls his boss. Says, I have an Elvis guy. She's like, can he come down to the casino right now? Grab my guitar, drive to the casino, played a couple of songs. I got hired, and they put me through dealing school, and then just started performing there. From there, I went into a band performing locally throughout Joliet, Plainfield area. And so that was, but eat, sleep, breathe Elvis in that period of time, just to know his mannerisms and even how to grab the microphone, the little things that you have to perfect to be able to pay tribute to such an amazing man.
So do you have a song prepared for us then, I assume?
Yes, he
I'm
does.
always prepared. A lot of people don't know this one. It's called Kentucky Rain, but it's one of my favorite songs to perform as Elvis. So here you go. 7 lonely days and a dozen towns ago, I reached out one night and you were gone. I don't know why you'd run, what you're running to or from. All I know, I want to bring you home.
Dude, that was insane, man. That was so good. I closed my eyes and I could not tell the difference.
I didn't think you were actually singing in some of these videos. I thought it was a cover. Like I thought you were lip singing some of them.
No,
that was
I'd
amazing.
Say thank you.
Wow.
Jorge, it's great to know that you play a little Elvis before games to get him in the zone. Do you guys have any other fun pregame rituals, or what's your favorite part when you get to the rink together? John Weideman likes to dab up whoever his partner is for the night and get going on the broadcast. Do you guys have any fun things that you like to do before the games?
We usually take on a nice little walk downstairs, and then we go to the cafeteria, catch up, get something to eat, and then after that it's just straight up showtime. Whenever I feel Miguel either a little nervous or a little too quiet, I give him a little a cue on Elvis, and he starts singing, starts letting loose, and I know it's showtime after that.
I love that.
You guys have great chemistry. It's kind of like in a weird way, it's sort of like a marriage or something like that. I mean, Colby doesn't like to acknowledge that we're that close as broadcast partners. But.
No, I do. I love you guys.
No, it is true.
I much prefer to spend time with Caley than you, but I don't get to make the schedule.
Yeah, with George, it's like when I don't see him, I'm like, hey, dude, you good?
Usually,
Jorge,
he has a favorite drink. It's called Malta, and I usually before like a big game or before the he sang the 7th inning stretch, because I knew he was nervous. I knew he was a little nervous before he sang the anthem and the stretch. I gave him his favorite drink. I'm like, just take a deep breath and relax, and you're gonna do great, buddy.
Tell us a little bit about that, Miguel. How awesome of an experience was that, singing the national anthem before a Cubs game? Man,
that was unreal, and this year was the second time that I did it. But for some reason, this year was just it was just on, I would want to say, a bigger stage. More eyes were on us. More eyes were on what we were doing. And we made a great connection with the fans at Wrigley and around Wrigley. And so it was just a little bit more special this time around. But like George said, I was nervous. Jorge was like, Miguel, just breathe and relax, But I was nervous, like you cannot imagine. But it was great. It's one of those things that my passion is singing from the get-go when I went into radio was because I wanted to sing. I wanted to be able to get my music on the radio somehow. It didn't work that way, but but the career worked out, But that's what I love to do. I love to sing.
That's really cool.
Jorge, you talked about going to 9 or 7 different countries and seeing the Hawks.
Yeah.
In all over the world, Sweden, Finland, Russia. What do you have a bucket list item that you're chasing right now, or what's been one of your most surreal NHL experiences so far in your career?
I think it would have to be either going to Montreal, another original six team, and just seeing how they live and breathe hockey. That in Toronto, I think both of those cities, just being around all those fans, it's like kind of like I was at the UC, but just on the opposite side, just wearing my Hawks gear, and being able to scream a goal as a fan at those stadiums in those cities. It's amazing, and you kind of like you feel their passion for it, and you come back home and you just feel that much more proud of your team, of your city. And it's just it's amazing. First and foremost, to travel to a different country and then to travel to doing it for your favorite teams is just best of both worlds.
Did you do any broadcasting when you were in Montreal, or were you there as a fan?
No, I went in as a fan. I did both of those. I did actually a 3-game trip. I started off in Ottawa. I love taking the bus, so I took the Greyhound to Montreal.
Whoa,
and then took it back
Greyhound
to Toronto.
guy.
So that's
Wow.
my form of
Commitment.
traveling. Either whichever way I can
That's
get to where I need to get there is how I'll get there.
Are you not a good flyer, Jorge? Are you scared of being up on a plane?
No. I've just traveled so much in my life that it's just it doesn't matter. I've traveled 36 hours on a bus to go watch a soccer final for 2 hours to take the 36-hour bus back home. So it's just however I could get there. It's just that's my method of traveling.
What soccer game did you do that for?
It was a soccer final it was a Tigres versus Santos. So my favorite soccer team is Tigres from the city of Monterrey, and they were on a 29-year championship drought. So I told my mom, like, you know what, I gotta go, grab the backpack, and just head on over.
That's incredible.
So, Jorge, I got to ask, World Cup is coming up in November, and your dad is from Ecuador,
Correct.
and your mom is from Mexico.
Correct.
So both those teams, and for that matter, the United States, all three of those nations are in the World Cup. So how are you going to be dividing your rooting interests in the World Cup?
It's funny you say that because they actually Mexico played Ecuador in 2002 in the Korea-Japan World Cup, and I remember that night vividly. My mom was in one room, my dad was in another room, and it was just like, where do I go? Who am I rooting for in this game? But you find time to root for each and every team. Like going back to your roots and on my father's side, Ecuadorian side, just seeing his passion for the game and my grandparents, and then on the Mexican side, we know how Mexican people, they love soccer. So it's just finding time for both cultures. It's always nice.
But you didn't answer the question. Who are you rooting for?
I would say I'm rooting for Ecuador. I'm an Ecuadorian at heart too. So.
All right, there you go.
Isn't there a pretty heated rivalry in soccer between the U.S. and Mexico, where like the U.S. hasn't won a game in Mexico in as long as they're tracking it, basically?
Yeah. So they not in Mexico, but in the U.S., the national team has Mexico's number. So it's been a great rivalry, and that's another one in my bucket list that I would love to attend, especially in Mexico City in Estadio Azteca with 90,000 fans. So those are those type of matches that you as a sports fan you live and breathe for.
Get that backpack ready.
Yeah.
Miguel, I saw that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Real
Chris.
quick, you can't take a bus to Qatar though. Like, so you're thinking about
That's a long flight to Qatar. So.
It's some Oregon Trail stuff right there, if you are.
Miguel, I saw that you went home for the first time in like 16 years to Puerto Rico to see family. How was that experience, and what they think of your broadcasting career?
Yeah, no, that was fun. I actually lived in Puerto Rico as a kid. I was out there. I went to school for a couple of years in Puerto Rico. So, like you said, 16 years, it was a long time for me. And just because of work, there was no way to leave everything that I was doing. And this year there was a kind of like a little family reunion. It was actually one of my uncle's 50th year wedding anniversary, and a lot of family from Florida were going to be there, and from Chicago as well. And I looked on the schedule. Cubs were away for that week, so I don't do the away games with the Cubs. So I was like, I'm going to Puerto Rico. So I made sure I booked a flight, and it was cool. It was real good to be back there, and just made me think, why did I wait so long to come back? And just seeing my family out there, my aunts and uncles and cousins that I had not seen in so many years. It was just refreshing, and I loved every single second of it.
Well, fellas, listen, it's been great having you on, and we'll definitely get you on again later in the season to continue to talk about the team. And this has been a ton of fun. We know that, as Colby mentioned, you guys have work to do tonight as we tape this Monday Night Football, Bears-Pats. And then, of course, another Blackhawks game against the Panthers coming up around the corner as well. But I guess before we go, I just wanted to ask, the Spanish language community is so large and so diverse. But, as far as it relates to the game of hockey, how do you think the sport is doing in the Spanish-speaking community? And, what do you think about its potential to grow with and among Spanish language fans?
I think the Blackhawks have done such an amazing job at getting Latinos to the game the past couple of years, where we've done the different events at the atrium, like the one we're having, and those little things. And now, once we're at the United Center and we look at the scoreboard, when you have fans on there, you see a lot of Latinos that are in the stadium, and it's cool to see because and for me, I know Jorge has had this passion for hockey for a very long time. For me, it's new. For me, I always here and there saw it, but it wasn't like that was the sport that I was following. Just because growing up, it wasn't a thing that my father said, let's go and watch a Blackhawks game. It was, let's go and watch a baseball game. So I think that's the what we've been doing, and obviously the relationship that the Univision has created with the Blackhawks has been fantastic, just to have that outreach and be able to really show the beauty of the sport. Because like Jorge mentioned a while ago, it's very similar to soccer. It really is. And for me, I'm not a soccer guy, but I love hockey so much. It's like it's so exhilarating. It's just so good. So for the people that actually love soccer, can get a little bit of this, and it's just you once you see it, you won't go back.
I also think it's been amazing how the NHL as a whole has been accepting the Hispanic communities all around the country, because now I believe it's 5 NHL teams that have Spanish broadcasting, including the Nashville Predators. I believe they have every single game this year. So I think it's just amazing, just for us being one of the original 6 teams to having Spanish broadcastings all over the city. Like you said, the Chicagoland area is so diverse, and for the fans to be able to listen to the sport of hockey in Spanish, it's a blessing for us and an honor for us to be the voices behind it. But it's also a lot of responsibility, and I think it's been an amazing ride so far.
Well, again, we really appreciate you coming on, and again, you guys are so involved across the Chicago sports media landscape, and you're a big part of what we do with the Blackhawks, obviously, and it's great to call you colleagues. And again, we'll absolutely have you guys on another episode of the podcast later this season, and good luck with the rest of Bears season, and we'll see you at the United Center as Blackhawks season rolls around. Thanks a lot for coming on, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Much appreciated.
Well, great interview from Miguel and Jorge. Again, honored to call them colleagues, and really excited to see what the rest of the season has in store for all of us. Halloween, it's here. I've certainly enjoyed seeing the fall decorations around town. And Caley, plans for Halloween? I mean, are you a big costume mom? Do you like dressing up the kids? Do you have costumes picked out for this Halloween?
Yes, working in sports, as you know, you don't always get to celebrate. So when I was in Tampa, I kind of missed a few years of Halloween, but I used to take a lot of pride in handcrafting every costume I made myself. The last couple years, thank you, my Ivy costume from Batman, I handcrafted all the glittery leaves myself on a corset for hours. Didn't get a single picture that day, but that's probably my favorite costume that I did.
Did you have to wear a red wig for that?
I was going to say, you could go as Poison Ivy this year, Caley.
Yeah, I was going to,
I know. I think I've been manifesting red, because last year the family was Scooby-Doo gang and I was Daphne. And this year, before I dyed my hair, I wanted to be Wilma, and the kids are going to be Pebbles and Bam Bam. So the husband, Danny, is out of the picture. Fred's out, but it's Wilma in action and the kids. So I'm excited.
Danny would be an awesome Fred Flintstone.
I know, and he was supposed to build.
He's the modern Fred Flintstone.
He is Fred Flintstone.
Yes.
A little more sophisticated, but he is the modern Fred
Just
Flintstone.
Goes outside and builds a sauna. Fred Flintstone.
I wish he was here for it, but he was supposed to handcraft the like dinosaur car too thing where you like scabadabadoo or no, is that scabadoo?
Yabbadabadoo.
Yabbadabadoo. I was mixing Scooby in there, but thank you. That's gonna be my costume this year.
Colby, I know that you've not that you're dressing up this year by any means, but you've got a pretty epic costume history thanks to your lovely wife, Alex.
I've had two probably that I was not mortified by in my life, or that were good effort ones. And one year, I think it was my first year pro, Halloween parties are big in hockey. Teams go ham for those Halloween. The wives get really into it. The players get really into it. I've had years where we combined the Halloween party with the rookie party. So one year I was LMAFO, the guy with the big hair from LMAFO. And I actually have a picture of that like deep on my Instagram. And I was actually pretty proud with how that turned out when you like put like a side by side to the fact where my friend from college who went with my wife to the game the other night said something to me about that costume. Like she somehow remembered that. So that one I was pretty proud of. And then maybe a couple years ago in Philly, my wife took me to some Halloween party, made me dress up as Willy Wonka. She did the violet thing, painted her face blue. And I kicked and screamed, and I was not happy about it. But she did do a very, very nice job putting the costume together. So I appreciated her effort.
Yeah, I'm sure Alex would absolutely be able to put together a stellar costume, and that picture was excellent. But LMFAO, so are you sexy and you know it, Colby? Is that
was not that? I did it with one of my.
I'm so
other,
glad you asked that.
I did it with one of my other teammates. What are their names? Like Big Foo or something like that, or Red Foo or something. I don't know. It's so long ago. Those guys haven't had a song in forever. I'm gonna have to look at my Instagram now and see if it's still on there, and if it is, I might have to hide the photo.
Well, Caley, hearing that
Chris,
you
what are
put
you gonna
together
be?
your kid, well, you know what? So unfortunately, I got invited. My girlfriend is going to a 1980s themed murder mystery party, but it's the Saturday of the Buffalo Sabres game, unfortunately, so I won't be able to go. We'll be out of town, but she's got her basically prom dress picked out for it. But I was reflecting back on some Halloween costumes that I've aced, and hearing actually, Caley, you say that you make your kids' costumes. Oh
boy,
that's amazing. That's a straight doppelganger.
Oh my.
Oh my gosh.
The tagline for the Instagram, and this was 2012. I wrote "Shake That," so I didn't write "I'm sexy and I know it." Thank God I didn't write that, because you guys
Are those
would
two
crush
different
me for
songs?
that. Shake
Yes.
That? Yeah, that's a different song, I think.
I can't remember. They were both
play
so
it for
good.
you.
They've lasted till now, though. But Chris,
Now
what is your reflection costume?
Well, so my mom, when I was a kid, made a lion costume for me, completely from scratch, if you will, by hand. It had a mane and everything, and I think I even wore that to school. I was like so
proud.
obsessed with this costume. Yeah, so that would probably be costume number one for me. I probably need something more recent to add to my costume resume, but when it comes to Halloween costumes, maybe I am a little bit behind in creativity, but we'll have to change that. But I always use work as an excuse.
Do you remember last year, Caley? Remember how Dylan Strome's wife dressed their little girl up as their dog? Do you remember that costume? I remember you and I talking about it because we thought it was like so stinking cute. Do you remember?
Wrigley,
or no?
I don't remember. I can't think of the picture, but that sounds very familiar. Any baby
Yeah.
and a puppy. I made my
Was
daughter
it-
a puppy for the first time for Halloween. You have to do it. They're so cute.
Okay,
Lion
so I'm
is also
all right,
cute.
I'm taking notes then. I'll remember that.
Gotta dress them up as a puppy or Winnie the Pooh. A lion is adorable. Shout out Mama Vosters for making one of your top costumes all time.
We're gonna need to see pictures of that, Chris.
I know.
They're around. I can dig one up, I'm sure. Well, listen, we are out of time on the latest episode of the Blackhawks Insider Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a happy Halloween. And remember, you can always visit Blackhawks.com for more content that's available 24/7. Special shout out as well to Brad Dollar and Southside Jake for the music featured on the podcast. We will talk to you all next week.